When you think about businesses that are selling through the roof, like Skims or Allbirds, sure, you think about a great product, a cool brand, and great marketing. But an often overlooked secret is actually the businesses behind the business, making selling and for shoppers buying simple. For millions of businesses, that business is Shopify. It's home of Shop Pay, the #1 checkout in the world. You can use it to boost conversions up to 50%, meaning way less carts going abandoned and way more sales going through to checkout. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Allbirds uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/income, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/income to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/income.
This is The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic. How would you handle being diagnosed with an incurable condition that affected everything you do? One whose symptoms come on suddenly and erratically and affected you both mentally and physically. If you're anything like Betsy Mueller, you'd use it as an inspiration for the greatest endurance adventure of your life. Betsy is a runner in Flagstaff, Arizona, who struggles from a form of multiple sclerosis that can cause numbness, fogginess, dizziness, and more. But instead of letting it sideline her, she's embarking on a journey that would be awe-inspiring even if she were completely healthy. Let's learn more. Welcome to The Planted Runner. I'm Coach Claire Bartholic, and my mission is to help you improve your running, your mindset, and your life with science-backed training and plant-based nutrition. Today's conversation is with Betsy Mueller, who is training to be the first person with MS to run across the United States. You'll learn what inspired her to set out on this adventure, what her training, diet, and life look like, and you just might be inspired to search for your own limits in running and your life. Betsy is coached by multiple-time Planted Runner guest Matt Fitzgerald, who I'll talk to again soon, and he admits he has never trained an athlete like Betsy for a goal quite like this. If you need a little motivation or inspiration for your own running, this is the one for you. And of course, don't forget to stay tuned all the way to the end of the episode for another Mental Strength Minute. Fortify your mind in 60 seconds or less. And now my conversation with Betsy Mueller. Welcome to The Planted Runner, Betsy.
Thank you.
So quite a few people have run across the country, but
Yes.
You are planning to do it with MS. So what in the world inspired you to do that?
I think, I know it was from being inspired by the other people that have been, that have ran across the United States. I've watched documentaries, heard them on podcasts, and it always felt like, wow, that's really great. But then when I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, that kind of faded, but it came back, and it came back more as a personal challenge for myself. Mm-hmm. But then being aware that I could bring awareness of MS and, the challenges MS brings on people's lives, and maybe I could inspire other people. Mm-hmm. So that's really.
So what are some of the challenges? Not everybody knows exactly what MS is. Can you describe what your symptoms are and the story of how it came on?
Yeah. So MS is a autoimmune disease, and it's the central nervous system from your brain to your spinal cord. And basically it messes up the communication. The myelin sheath wraps around your nerve, and what happens is my B cells attack that myelin. So when that myelin's attacked, some of it can become exposed, and then the communication going back and forth, everything from, take a step to, I have to solve this problem. Messes up, can mess up with, multiple sclerosis can mess that up. So,
so it affects you mentally too?
It can, yeah.
Okay.
It can, So for me, it was numbness, tingling. And I think a lot of people get that tingling feeling, but you're just more like, oh, well, that's odd. And
Right.
you just write it off like, well, that's because of this or that. And then, I think, so numbness, tingling, fatigue was a really hard, like I should have known something because in the beginning I was just really tired all the time. And for me, that's not normal.
Right.
To the point where I was like, I'm just going to lay down because I'm so tired. I don't know what else to do. And it's like a whole body fatigue. It's not like a fatigue where you're, oh, I had a long day and I'm tired. It's just like you physically, you're just so tired. You're so drained and you just can't even think about doing the next thing. So
yeah. Yeah. So have you been a runner for a long time? And then all of a sudden this diagnosis came on?
Yeah, but I wasn't like this serious runner, like, oh, let's go. Like it was more for fun and to stay in shape. But it wasn't for like, I got to win this race. I have to, PR. It was just more for enjoyment and staying healthy.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like super long.
Well, now it's about to get really serious.
Yes.
I'd love to kind of hear what the mental shift was because, lots of people run. Pretty much everybody listening to this right now, I assume is a runner. But they don't watch a documentary and want to run across the country, like this. Yeah. It seems to be like this is a really big leap for you.
Yeah, I guess when you say it like that, that does kind of like, oh, I think it's with having multiple sclerosis, it's very unpredictable. And so you don't know what the outcome can be the next day. And I think after the first year of finding out that I have MS, it was really hard. And I didn't... Because I felt like I failed at something, and not only did I fail at something, but I felt my body was failing, even though people couldn't see. Like you can't see that half of my face is numb, and my arms like numb. You can't see that, but I thought if this progresses, maybe then people would be able to tell, and they're going to be able to tell I failed, and so it's just really depressing. So like. It was just like, I felt like every morning I woke up, it was going to be worse. And so finally, once I had plasma exchanges and it took away the numbing and, it slowly started coming back, the feelings. And I thought, okay, it wasn't like in a day, but finally it was like, my husband said, why don't we do a marathon? And I was just like, okay, he's right. At first I was like, I don't know, you go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
And then I was like, no, I have to do it because I don't want to wake up and not be able to walk and then think, oh, I should have done that.
Yeah.
Because now I'm doing the same thing is just, sitting around feeling bad for myself and concentrating on what's wrong. Instead of looking forward and thinking, what can I do?
So how does running help, or does it help? Is it just more difficult? I mean, or does it help you with your symptoms?
For me, running, it's not more difficult. Okay. And looking back when I was like, still had that numbing and other weird things, just like I would trip, but it's like, oh, there's nothing there. What did I trip on? So you can lose your balance. You can get dizzy. And I would find myself like turning around, but I felt like I was still like turning. So now that I've been running more, I don't feel those symptoms anymore. Like they would, periodically come and go. I think a lot has to do with the heat. Okay. I lived in Wisconsin before we moved to Flagstaff, and I feel that the humidity was huge, but I didn't know it because when I would run in Wisconsin, it's almost like my head would feel like a big balloon and just puffy. But I look in the mirror, I'm like, no, I look normal.
Right.
And after I found out I had MS and after these symptoms were here with the numbing of the face, and I would still go running because I'm like, well, this is what makes me feel good. These symptoms, like it would be overheated where my face would just feel just like the numbness would just come like here and then like above my eye. And then I would get scared, like, oh, is the optic nerve, is it being attacked? And am I not going to be able to see? So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those who are listening that don't know, Wisconsin is hot and humid in the summer, and Flagstaff, even though it's in Arizona, is up in the mountains. So it's usually a little bit cooler. It's not as hot in the summer as Wisconsin is.
Yeah. It's like a dry air, which is completely different from what I was used to.
Yeah. So it sounds like there are some treatments, but there's no cure. Is that correct? So yes. What are some of the things that, what are some of the treatments that are helping you live with this?
Definitely getting good sleep. That's really important. I'd never realized it before, but when I didn't get good sleep in the past, I would get these numbing things or really bad fog brain. That's like the worst symptom that I get. And it's usually caused if I didn't get good sleep.
Okay.
Because it's just like, it's like you're trying to think like, what did I do a half an hour ago? And it's like, I cannot remember. And it's like, I should remember what I did a half an hour ago.
Right.
So that's the worst one. And eating healthy is by far one of the best. So
good. Well, I want to talk to you about that because I was happy to learn that you are plant-based too. So perfect runner, plant-based for this podcast. So tell us about that. How long have you been? Why did you become plant-based? What kind of diet do you have? Tell us all about that.
So, we became plant-based around probably 6 years ago. Okay. And is that point in my life where I wanted to be more preventative. Mm-hmm. I was thinking like, I don't want to take pills for the rest of my life. I don't want to go to doctor's appointments. I just want to be able to enjoy life and not have to do these things. But funny how that is.
Yeah.
But so I just started, picking up the running and, eating healthy. And then my younger brother had brought me over this National Geographic by Dan
Buettner, the Blue Zones?
Yes.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And so I was reading it and I'm like, this is exactly how I've always felt about food. Like it should just be simple.
Right.
Because as a young person in high school, I became vegetarian from sophomore year till I was like 20 years old. And, I just remember like learning as a kid, meeting like some doctor friends of my grandfather's where they were vegetarian, but they bought me and my sister McDonald's because they thought, which I thought was, this is a treat. But then like learning like why they were vegetarian. And it's like, my brain, it just made sense. Like we're taught these things, like where food comes from, but then we're eating these things that are like in a box, a cardboard box. So it just was like, wait, why are we doing these things? We're taught one thing, but then we're doing the other. Mm-hmm. So I think I've always been, aware of that and just kind of stuck with me. And so when I read the National Geographic, it was like, okay, I like beans, I like vegetables, and now there's these really simple recipes to make.
Yeah. So, did you notice any change in your health and the way you felt?
Yeah. I felt like I wasn't tired in the morning when I woke up. I felt like I had more energy. And we don't eat dairy either, so I don't like that helps too. I don't know if this is with you or not, but do you ever feel when you eat a lot of carrots, like you feel like, oh, my skin looks good too? Like,
I haven't noticed specifically with carrots, but yes, I mean, I am lucky to have good skin, but that has to do with how I eat as well. I definitely think so. Yeah, for sure. But no, I haven't noticed the carrot connection, but I have some in the fridge. So now I'll have some after this. So did you go plant-based before you got back into, really into running or?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you don't notice any difference in your running because you were already plant-based when you really started.
Correct. Yes.
Gotcha. Same with me. So back to running. So your coach is Matt Fitzgerald. He's been on the show a few times. Actually, I'm going to talk to him probably in a month or two again about his latest and greatest book. He's always coming out with something.
I know.
I would love to hear that story. So how did you meet? How did you choose him? What's the story with Matt?
So when we moved to Flagstaff, I was looking for a running coach, and then I found this Dream Run Camp, and I was like, well, what's this Dream Run Camp? And then I realized, oh, he's our neighbor. So then I emailed and said, could I join Dream Run Camp but not stay there? Mm-hmm. And so he emailed me back like, why don't you come over tomorrow night? We're having like a Dream Run Camp live event. And I'm like, okay. And I'm more like shy. I like to just kind of sit back and then, then I'll start talking kind of thing. So I went there, and he was actually interviewing another coach, James McCurdy. And so I was like, I do not fit here at all. And then he invited me back that Saturday and asked me to bring my husband and our youngest daughter. And so I'm like, okay. And then we're just talking, and he just said, like, why do you want to be my coach? He was starting this Dream Run Camp Dream Run Camp just had started. So here comes me like, hey, can you be my coach? And so he was talking with me and just like trying to understand, like, why do you, what's your goal? And so finally I told him, I was like, well, I want to run across America. And I was kind of waiting for him to tell me like, well, why don't you just try, PRing in the marathon or, do 100 miles, then see if you want to run across America.
Fair question.
But he just the question he asked me was, is this a feeling you have inside? And I never really thought of that. And then I did. And I was like, yeah, this is a feeling that I have inside. And he was just like, okay. And that was it. And I was just like, wait, you're not talking me out of this. This is great. And that's like one of the things I learned from him is how he doesn't try to talk people out of things. He just, he's like, I don't know if I can do this or not. I don't know if you can do this or not, but let's try it together. So
after a short break, I'll be back with more of my conversation with Betsy Mueller. I don't know about you, but those heavy, ugly plastic jugs of laundry detergent make no sense to me. You're paying for mostly water, they take up a ton of room in your laundry room, and then you toss the huge plastic jug in the recycling. And did you know that 500 million of those bottles end up in landfills and oceans every single year? That's why I made the switch to Earth Breeze laundry sheets. They come in plastic-free packaging, take up almost no space, and you're not wasting your money paying for watery detergent. It's an easy way to get clean clothes without all that plastic waste. Get 40% off with your subscription at earthbreeze.com/plantedrunner. That's earthbreeze.com/plantedrunner. The Planted Runner is sponsored today by Liquid IV. As we go into cold weather running season, you might think that you don't need to hydrate like you did in the summer. The truth is, it's actually just as important even on your colder runs. But I gotta tell you that a lot of sports drinks out there are full of artificial stuff and might not be getting you all the electrolytes you need as an athlete. One of my favorite ways to hydrate is with Liquid IV. My current favorite flavor is pina colada, which also, by the way, makes a great mocktail this holiday season. In each packet, you get 8 vitamins and nutrients, 3 times the electrolytes of the leading sports drink, and no artificial sweeteners. Stay hydrated through the holidays with Liquid IV. Get 20% off your first order of Liquid IV when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code PLANTED at checkout. That's 20% off your first order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code PLANTED at liquidiv.com. And we're back with more from Betsy Mueller. So what are the answers to those questions? Why not PR in the marathon? Why not run 100 miles?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think because I know, I feel like then I'll always have to PR, and then I'm always going to have to push myself. And then for me, for me personally, it's going to be me failing at something. So then if I don't PR that one time, I know me and I'll be like, oh, well, I failed at it. So either I'll quit or most likely I'd probably quit and wouldn't want to race again.
Gotcha.
And so the 100 milers, that does excite me, but I think the non-sleeping part, or when they sleep and it's not enough sleep, I'm like, well, then I've got to throw in these MS symptoms will come. So.
Right. Okay. So what is training like? So what were you doing before you met Matt, and how has your, training progressed?
So I was training before we moved. I was kind of training to do triathlons just a little bit because my husband does them and he thought it'd be fun if we both did them. Mm-hmm. But I really don't like to swim that much. So I was kind of training for that, but mostly running. And just a little. And I was going to do a triathlon, but I never signed up for it. And so then I was more doing CrossFit and running, but the running was more probably 15 to 20 miles a week.
Okay.
Yeah. If that, I would say. Mm-hmm. And now it's probably, last week was 101 miles.
Okay. So that's some serious miles.
So yeah, that's,
yeah. So what does that look like? Take us through a week of what's 100-mile week look like? So
it just depends. So right now Matt's giving me always putting in a 40 miler during the week. Otherwise it's usually 2 hours every day. Or I will do strength training with Matt in some of his campers on Mondays and Thursdays. So then on those days, it's an hour and a half run. It's usually always on time, which is fine. But that's why I like the 40 milers almost, because it's my brain will go to, I can finish a little faster, instead of I got to run for 5 hours or 4 hours.
Yeah. It's how is your body handling all of this? I mean, even if you didn't have MS, this is a lot.
Yeah. It seems to be handling it good. I think I just, if I keep up on my nutrition, my water, my resting when I can. But I have a younger daughter who's 11. So it's even when I'm running, if I have 40 miles, and then I have another 40 miler the next day. Usually during those days, I will take it easy. But then the next day or the day before I start that, I still have things I have to get done around the house.
Yeah.
Life.
So how much time? This is so much time. How do you fit it all in?
I know. I don't know. I just kind of do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I assume he's been building you up gradually. You didn't go from 15 miles a week to 100 miles a week overnight. Yes. How long was that progression?
So I started training with him of August 2023. And I would say last winter, it was slowly run 6 hours. I was okay. And then it's but then for a couple of weeks, it was easy. And then he would throw in a run. It was always a test. He didn't tell me this, but he would always say stuff like, well, you're ahead of schedule because I give you these tests, but I don't know he's giving me these tests. And he's like, and you're passing each one. So I'm like, okay, that's great. So now I'm pretty much ready for it, but we want to wait till, March because springtime with the weather and everything. I don't want it to be too hot.
Absolutely. Well, one thing Matt really is famous about writing about is the mental side of athletics and endurance. What has he taught you there?
You know, he I would say
he just lets you go.
I don't understand when people with the mental side, because I even asked him once, I said, cause he asked me, how are you doing mentally? This was probably a few weeks ago. And I said, Matt, I don't know what people like, I don't know what you mean mentally. Like, what do you want to hear? And he's just like, well, are you getting anxiety? Are you feeling like you wake up and you're like, oh, I got to run? I was like, no. I said, I feel quite the opposite. Like I wake up and I'm excited to go running and I don't feel that anxiety. Like if anything, running just like lets me be free. And like, I don't have to think of anything. It's just like, I can just run. I don't know what I think about because I don't listen to music or podcasts. I used to like on my shorter runs, I do because they're like shorter, which makes them feel longer.
Still 2 hours.
Right. So sometimes I will.
Yeah. So, what are the logistics of the cross country run? So you're going to start in March. Yes. What's the plan?
So we're going to start in Santa Monica and then head towards Flagstaff, and then from Flagstaff head towards New York, where we're adding on like 200 miles because I want to go through Wisconsin. So, I'll be running, but, my husband and our youngest daughter will be in an RV, and along the way, we'll have campsites that we'll stop at, and I will have a support vehicle, which hopefully our 2 older daughters will be taking turns driving. And, that support vehicle will be with me while I run, because I can't carry like water for 400 or 400 for 40 miles.
4,000 miles.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So your whole family is just, putting their lives on pause to help mom do this?
Yes. So far, the 2 older ones, I mean, they work and they have, responsibilities. So we're going to see which weeks and days will work out.
Yeah. And then I'm assuming your youngest will be homeschooled, or how does that work? Yes.
So we're going to pull her out of school and then she'll do online for like 2 months.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Absolutely amazing. So how long is this supposed to last?
Well, if I did 40 miles a day, it would be 80 days-ish. But things are going to go wrong. I'm going to feel tired, I'm sure. I'm not, rest days are going to look different. I'm not sure what. Matt just tells me rest days are going to look different. So we're waiting to discuss that. But, you run into problems all the time. So I want to say around 3 months, hopefully. And if not, that's okay. So I'm not doing this to break a record or anything. So.
Right. Yeah. What will it mean to you when you cross the finish line, the imaginary finish line?
Oh man. It would mean it would just mean that like you can have this chronic illness, but you can still push yourself, and you can see what you're capable of, because it's so much easier to, I think, stay in that mind frame of worry. And I could have easily have done that first year. Mm-hmm. And I try to think back. I don't really know what pulled me out of there. I know little things that happens, and maybe that's what did it. All these little things that happened pushed me forward. But yeah, that I will just feel like you can accomplish anything. If I have this chronic illness, like multiple sclerosis, that is this unpredictable disease, you just have so much strength. Like that's the thing about people with MS. They have, they have a lot of strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I've got to ask you the flip side of this story, or of that question. I mean, what happens if you don't finish?
If I don't finish, that's okay too, because at least I'm trying it. And that's the part that usually I back off on, is like, I'll have an idea and I'll be like, I should do this. And then I'm like, it's too much work. It's so I feel like the only way I would stop is if my body was breaking down and stopping. So, or if I get injured, of course.
Right. This kind of makes me want to ask the question, let's say you never had this disease. Let's say your life, you could rewind to before you had any symptoms. You wouldn't be doing this if you had never had this disease, right? So do you somehow look at it as a gift?
Yeah, because you are right, because I had thought about this and I had watched some documentaries and listened to podcasts. Like, I could do that. But like what I do is I talk myself out of things and like, no, you can't, you're too busy.
Right.
So yeah, I do. I think as soon as you look at something like a chronic illness or any type of disease as a gift, if you can find that, that's so powerful because it just brings you to life. It's like you're getting your life back almost, because you're fighting this unpredictable.
Yeah. So what's the biggest thing you would like people who are listening to this to take away from their story? I mean, obviously most people listening to this don't have a disease like yours. They're perfectly healthy runners. What bit of advice, what would you like them to take away after listening to your story?
Maybe ask themselves, like, what could I do if I could push my limits? Because I feel like we're our worst enemies sometimes, our thoughts. It's like those thoughts will come in our brain and we just kind of let them circle around. But if we ask ourselves, like, what could I do? What would happen if I pushed my limits? Like, wow. And everybody's different, so I can't say what that limit would be or what that goal would be. It doesn't have to be huge. It can be small, because small goals are so big in themselves. So
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really good place to kind of wrap it up, Betsy. I'm really glad that you came on the show to talk about your story, and we'll definitely be following you in March. So do you have the start date specifically, an exact date?
March 10th.
March 10th, 2025. So if other people want to follow your journey, where can they find you?
Sure. I'm on Instagram, TikTok, and I have a website. Betsy runs the US with MS, and all my information's there.
Perfect. We'll include that all in the show notes if people would like to follow you. But thank you so much. Even though you haven't started your journey across the country yet, you're already inspiring people.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
And now it's time for the Mental Strength Minute. Fortify your mind in 60 seconds or less. Today's topic is stop testing your foundation. If you are a goal-oriented runner, it's very tempted to want to test your fitness, see where you're at, and try to determine if you're on the right track for your big goals. The only problem with that is if you are building to a big goal, testing your fitness is like kicking the foundation of your house while the mortar's still wet. Sure, you can race a 5K during a marathon build to attempt to gauge if your goal is realistic, but there's no guarantee that a 5K will tell you anything about how you can run a marathon. So let go of the constant urge to double check your progress. Lay the bricks, let them set, and soon enough, you'll have your mansion. Thank you for listening to The Planted Runner, part of the Evergreen Podcast Network. Don't forget that you can win free access to one of my sprint session masterclasses just for writing an Apple Podcast review. So be sure to write yours right after your run today. Reviews are the #1 way to boost this show's reach, and it's a great way to tell me what you'd like to hear next because I read every single one. Have a great run today.
Women's Running Stories, where we explore the intersection between running and life. Because every woman who is committed to a running journey has a story to tell, and this is where you'll find those stories. I am host and producer Cherie Louise Turner. I'm a 53-year-old runner, and together with original music by musician and runner Cormac O'Regan, we bring these inspirational stories to life. Please join us to fuel your adventures.